Good morning, everyone. My name is Fred Combs. I'm happy to welcome you to the March meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. To lead us through our meeting this morning is our Board Chair, Mr. Harding Dow.
Thank you, Fred. Welcome, everyone. We will call the meeting to order and we will take the roll. Ms. Rogers. Can we?
Here.
All right. Ms. Borges Gonzalez is absent. Judge Thurston is absent. Mr. Ward.
Present.
Dr. Acapo is absent. And Mr. Schoninger.
Here.
All right. We are lacking a quorum for today, so we won't be able to take action on agenda items. At this time, is there any public comment on agenda items? Please.
Yes, my name is Adam Jones. I am here on behalf of Open Door Church, my constituents that use public transportation and build. And we are excited to listen in on the meeting today and hear your business. We also wanted to just follow up and say we're looking forward to an update on the microtransit study. We're awaiting response from Mr. Butler and Mr. Combs on how that study's going. And then we're also looking forward to a meeting. We're hoping to set a meeting with Mr. Combs and Mr. Butler, but appreciate your all's work and we're excited about the work you're doing on the microtransit study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Are there others? Excellent. As I said, lacking quorum, we will skip the approval of the minutes. I do not have a chair's report today, so we will move into the general manager's report.
Thank you, Harding. I have three items that I'd like to update everyone on today. The first being the Transit Center renovation. So we began our communications and marketing for mostly moving our operations to High Street and parts of MLK. We plan to begin that on April the 7th, and that will last until the end of construction. We've been working closely with our partners, including LFU CG Traffic Engineering, Kentucky Utilities, and Lex Park. To finalize those details, we're waiting, I think, on some permitting to be able to announce specifically where each bus is going to go and how our operations are going to work. So once that gets officially approved, we will be communicating that out, hopefully by the end of this week or early next week. Again, as a reminder, our staff will be using restrooms out on the route, and we ask for patience from our riders when that happens, and that's also going to, I think, ultimately impact our on-time performance. We will be monitoring how our operations change. I think we're into a little bit of the unknown when we talk about the traffic flows on High Street as it changes throughout the day and really what that impact is going to be. We will be as nimble as we can be to be able to meet the needs of our community as that project moves forward. Another key piece of that on-time performance is the loss of the signal priority on Vine Street that we enjoy today. We're not going to have that as we pull out in and out of traffic on High Street. So keep that in mind as that construction moves forward, and we do plan on having an update for the board every month until the project is complete. So the second item I have is our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. There were changes to the DBE program made at the federal level last year, which created two tiers based on total federal spend. Lextran is a Tier 1 agency, meaning we spend more than $670,000 on federal contracts. The overall changes to the program, as we've reviewed, aren't terribly large. Most of those are in reporting and record keeping. We'll make sure that we're in compliance with those changes. But what it did do was change our initial timeline. Our DBE program was scheduled to be updated coinciding with the federal fiscal year into October. That timeline has been pushed up, and our new deadline is June the 1st. So saying that, we'll be holding a public meeting with vendors doing business with Lextran, what we typically call it, that will take input on our goal. And that's going to happen on April the 24th and be part of a broader engagement piece as we get our goal updated ahead of the deadline in June, meaning that we'll be back in May to update the board on what we found. So expect that to come at our May meeting. One other thing to note about the DBE program, there is an ongoing court case, Mid-America Milling Company versus the Department of Transportation, which challenges the constitutionality of DBE programs. There has been a preliminary injunction for the plaintiffs out of federal court. I'm not sure what that means for the DBE programs moving forward, but we're keeping an eye on that, and if anything changes that affects us, we will let the board know. Lastly, more of an update on federal funding. On March the 11th, the Department of Transportation ordered a grant review or the administration ordered the Department of Transportation to review grants, all competitive awards, to make sure that everything aligns with the new administration's position, which includes climate change, equity, DEI, environmental justice, gender-specific alternatives, bicycle infrastructure, electric vehicles, and so forth. So this is definitely a different approach than what we saw in the previous administration. We expect any future competitive grant awards to have a different metrics. So we're trying to track marriage and birth rates. We think that might be part of the criteria that we decide on grant funds moving forward. If you recall, a few weeks ago there was talk of a government shutdown, which resulted in a continuing resolution to fund the government through this current federal fiscal year. Within that continuing resolution contained the grant funding for transit. So we do anticipate to receive our federal formula dollars for this year. And we also anticipate a new round of competitive grants, bus and bus facilities, and low and no emissions grants that we've seen before. Typically that happens in the spring, so we're looking forward to hopefully seeing a notice of funding come down in the next month or so. Of our grants that were under review, we had two, which was two low and no emission grant awards that are currently in production. So those are two bus purchases. That's the FFY 2024 and FFY 2022 grant awards. The FTA did conclude the review on those two grants, and everything is moving forward as we anticipated. So there's no changes to those grants at this time. Once those vehicles are finished and we take possession of those, we will get our reimbursement as planned. So that is my update. So Emily, you probably, if there's any questions about any of that, I'm happy to address that now.
I have questions.
Sure.
On the transit center and being a little off on the on-time schedule, are you adjusting schedules to reflect that?
We're trying to make sure that everybody has time, mostly in the routes, to use the restroom. I think that's our first priority. And we're kind of seeing how it goes, and then we'll make some changes to the schedule if we need to moving forward.
And then do you need to fudge some in for the takeoff time from High Street?
A little bit.
Okay. And then on the DBE update,
Mm-hmm.
is the federal government allowing you to use DBE language anymore?
As far as I know, yes. We've seen that in other aspects of transportation to start to remove that language, especially DEI, but we've not heard that with DBE.
Anything about that, Addison?
I don't.
It doesn't sound consistent with things that we're hearing at where I work.
And that's why I wanted to bring that court case up, that this could really pivot at any point.
Okay.
In this case, an injunction for the plaintiff.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
So the plaintiff in this case is a roadway construction company,
Mm-hmm.
and the court has said at any contract which these companies could potentially bid on, DBE contract requirements cannot stand. So you cannot have those DBE requirements in any contract that these plaintiffs might bid on.
Okay.
So
So,
that
so
really
the
doesn't-
injunction is specific to that
To those plaintiffs, yes.
individual plaintiff, I see. On the federal funding side, a couple of questions. Do we expect that competitive grants going forward may not include the requirement for low or no emissions, given that the federal administration seems to be removing that from a lot of their programming? And if so, would we consider, I guess, is fleet replacement important enough at this time that we would go into those competitive grants with a proposal to buy diesel vehicles instead of compressed natural gas to improve our chances of winning those grants, even if it meant that we didn't meet our own individual climate goals?
I think we need to see how the notice of funding comes down. I do expect that electric vehicles might be less of a priority. I think that's been a position of the new administration. However, our position has been compressed natural gas, and we have received grant awards from the low and no emissions program for compressed natural gas vehicles. If that is available when the notice of funding comes down, I think that's where our focus is going to be. At the end of the day, we have to go through fleet replacement based on the dollars that we can find. And if funding is available for diesel, I think that's something we'll have to at least look at.
Okay. Jamie, any questions before we move on?
No, and I was saying it didn't pass, which wouldn't really impact us, because I know there was a state bill introduced that it would take away locals' authority for preferential treatment to individuals. But that's more for local governments and public agencies from providing any preferential treatment to individuals. So I'm assuming if it's still there in our federal requirement, we would continue to do it.
Yes.
The state law, it didn't pass this session, but it was one introduced.
Saw that. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our monthly performance report and financials. Emily.
Perfect, thank you. Good morning. We will be reviewing this morning the performance report for February. And we'll start the report with our mission statement. We serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So for February, we hosted the LFUCG Council budget retreat on February 6th, and that was our second year hosting that event here, and it is open to the public, so it was a great opportunity for to have council here in the room, and then also host various members of the public as well. The 6th through the 8th, TransDev's Regional HR Director, Laura Bass, was here and conducted an HR audit, which we successfully passed. We did implement SnowPlan to start service on February 11th. We were not on SnowPlan for the entirety of the day. I believe everything was off of SnowPlan by about 1 p.m., 2 p.m. that day. We did begin a new partnership with LFUCG, collecting plastic bags to recycle for a Next Trex bench. So if you're familiar with the Trex decking, they have a recycling program, and they offer, if you collect 1,000 pounds of plastic bags, you can get a bench made of the same composite materials. So we partnered with LFUCG. We will be the beneficiary of the bench. It's a community effort. As of yesterday at 5 p.m., we are at 799 pounds of plastic bags. I think we had discussed it a little bit, and we thought it was going to be like September by the time we would get it, and it's been about a month. So we're excited about it, and it's moving along much faster than we thought. Entities are only able to apply for those once a year, so I don't know how that program will look as we move forward. There are other entities in Fayette County collecting plastic bags, but this specific initiative, the collection period, will be done much, much sooner than we anticipated.
How much
and
space do you need to store
1,000
pounds of plastic?
significantly more than you might expect. Also, people are really gross and put trash in them. Like,
They don't weigh anything.
no, they don't, and then they add up really quickly. So Kroger also accepts them, so does Publix, and so those are other drop-off locations, and then we've been able to sort of like push some there as well. We produce a lot of plastic, shockingly. Not shockingly at all, but we're really excited about it, and we're working with them to know sort of when you're not expecting something to be done until September. We're trying to figure out when we would receive it and what the processing time is and all of that, and I think it depends a little bit on their on Trek's line of benches being produced. Birds Speak Cheesy was here on February 26th, again, just to thank everyone for their hard work during the winter weather. And then Lex TV aired a Senior Minute number 11 on February 4th, and that was highlighting senior transportation and in partnership with Councilmember Lynch and the Senior Services Commission. So looking at ridership for February, you can see we're on a similar trend that we were. Ridership was up from January of this year, but still remains down overall. So looking at those numbers, 282,000 rides, almost 293 for the month. We did have that inclement weather day, and UK was back into session in February, so that would account for some of the increase in ridership. For the month, accidents were much more reasonable. So we had 2 preventable accidents in February, and there were fewer workers' compensation claims for the year. So we have had more accidents fiscal year to date. We have had fewer workers' compensation claims. And so that number, as we're continuing to monitor it, but it is normalizing, and that's a much more typical number that we've seen. For our maintenance team, they operated 15,927 miles between road calls for the month, completed 100% of their preventive maintenance inspections, and again, just doing a great job. We have seen that number bounce around just a little bit, but it was quite high for the month of February. Anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you. Morning, Randolph.
Good morning again. All right, so on the paratransit side, I will start off by saying that the monthly ridership came in at 12,839. Just like Emily mentioned before, that on the fixed route side, weather did have a small impact on service just for a stint of a time, a few hours out of the day. However, on the paratransit side, weather and construction kind of affects service in a different way. For the month of February, the weekday ridership was slightly below the previous physical year of about 1%. The weekend ridership fell for about maybe 2,000 trips less than the physical year of 24. We noticed that the total revenue miles and revenue hours continue to increase, but we also noticed that the trip count is still slightly below. I'm just moving my mouse over so you can see it's still slightly below the previous physical year. So that kind of shows you that the trips are getting a little bit longer than the previous physical year. But once again, just throwing out that the weather and construction and other things play a huge impact in the level of service from year to year. We also want to point out that the trips per hour is pretty steady. In the physical year of 25, 2 trips per hour. The month is pretty steady, and compared to the physical year of 24, it's also pretty steady of 2 trips, at least 2 trips per hour. On the preventable accident side, I do want to highlight that the previous month we did have 0 preventable, our TPDEV wheels did have 0 preventable accidents. This month it did come in at 3 preventable accidents, still less than the previous physical year. But once we identified that the preventable accidents started to still a slight increase this month, well, in the month of February, we did have weekly meetings with RTPDEV to discuss an action plan to address those accidents and incidents that occurred. We do have a monthly safety meeting this month to address some of those accidents. We had one last month. We have one every month. We also have drop cams in the vehicles that gives the safety managers and operations managers an opportunity to put in place preventative action plans for some of the operators to highlight some of the good and also make corrective actions for some of the bad behaviors as well. Preventable accidents per 100,000 miles is 3.11, making it days without no preventable accidents at 25. On this page, the paratransit OTP, if you notice in your board packets, came in at 76%, a little over 76%. If you notice in the trend line, it's pretty consistent in between. It has been pretty consistent in the last 90 days in between 70 to 75%, close to that 80% range. We do a monthly OTP compared to a audited OTP, and I just want to reiterate, we do that because we noticed inconsistencies in some of the data that reports the RTPDEV EcoLane software system. And EcoLane is basically the system that generates the trips, schedules the trips, and keep track of whether a trip is on time, early, or late. And the audited information for February came in at 70.74%, which is slightly below what the monthly report of EcoLane is reporting. And usually it fluctuates in between of about 4%, but we did notice that the more traffic, the more construction, the more weather, the longer that the trips get, we do see a slight increase from the trend line, whether it's above what the monthly report is showing versus what the audited report is showing. So you tend to see like a span of a gap, and then it kind of contracts back to being about 4% difference of that OTP report. The last thing that I like to mention before I switch over to the finances is that during the previous month, we did address that the target goal for the RATP Dev Wheels operators went from about 45 to 49. As of last week, we did reach that goal of having 49 operators. We also transitioned to seven new vehicles, 7 new buses into service as well. So we are expecting for the the April OTP to start showing that increase with the new vehicles and the new operators. Does anyone have any paratransit questions?
I'd like to ask Byron to introduce the newest member of our ATP Dev support team, Angela.
This is Angela Milroy. She's one of our GMs from one of our other locations. She's been out here assisting us here at Lextran. She was here last week and this week. She's back here out here. Angela.
Thank you, Angela.
Have any questions?
We're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question that probably goes back to Emily.
Okay.
Maybe it's Nikki. Of the new hires, how many are still with us?
Our last class, we started out with 10, and I believe yesterday we said 6 of those are left? Yes, 6 of the last class.
The class before that, Steve. How about the class before that? Because this looked a lot better.
I think we lost 3 out of the previous class.
Yeah, we started with 10, 11 in the previous class. Maybe 2 or 3,
Yeah.
I think something like that.
Yeah, we've had some really good applicants lately, and we have a really strong class right now. Our next class starts April the 14th. We're expecting 12 to 14 people for that class.
Excellent.
Okay, our balance sheet for the month of February. This takes us 8 months through the fiscal year. Operating cash is looking good. I'll mention that more about that in a moment on the when I look at the revenue. We're very comparable to last year on this, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, on our statement of revenue and expense, our property taxes, the budgeted number, it's down a little bit from the budgeted number because the money for February came in later in March than usual, and we didn't get it posted to February, so we're not worried at all about it. We have received money for February and March, so we're not worried. That's just a timing. Passenger fares are very close to budgeted amount. We're just about $6,400 from what we've budgeted. Federal funds, this is one I wanted to mention. We received $4.8 million in the month of February. This is where we've seen for this fiscal year that we've been under budget, and we've been ready to receive that money, and we did receive it in February. So we're very happy that that line on the financials looks much better. Our wages, they are more in line with the budgeted number. It's still over as expected. We've talked about that a little bit in the past. Fringe benefits and professional services are still under. You will see professional services pick up a little bit in the spring when we start our window cleaning and our carpet cleaning and all of our spring cleaning, basically. Materials and supplies, that one, of course, is over because of parts. Diesel fuel, we're looking really good at the time. Right now, the monthly average is $2.49, and the year-to-date average is $2.40. So it's just varying by pennies the last couple of months. Our CNG is still under budget. We, for the month of February, was around $1.38, so it's been running anywhere between $1.20 and $1.40 this whole fiscal year. So we're always happy to see that. Utilities are still under budget, which I was a little bit surprised. As cold as it was in January and February, I expected those to go up a little bit, but we're still looking good in that area. Paratransit is still under budget at this time, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Do you recall how much the property tax was that was received late?
I can't remember. I was thinking it was around 700,000. I think is what it was. So we should still be over budget from our budgeted number and over from where we were this time last year.
And Nikki, you may have tried to explain it, I just didn't hear. Why is the federal funding higher than expected?
This is the money that we've been waiting for. It's what our preventive maintenance and our paratransit money that we get back from FTA. It was late coming in from last year, so these are combined with last year's funds.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did not see a change order report, is that correct? Any old or new business?
No,
Okay, what have we got coming up?
we can go back now, we have quorum.
Oh, we do have a quorum. Thank you for being here, Dr. Capo. We will approve the minutes from the February 2025 and the March 2025 special meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and are there any comments or corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, let's go to proposed agenda items.
Two proposed agenda items, the first being the budget and capital plan for fiscal year '26. That's going to kick off with our finance committee on April the 11th, a work session on April the 16th, and then be on our board agenda for our April 26th meeting, or April 23rd meeting, sorry. Also, for April will be the HVAC services contract. That is a typical cycle, time to renew that contract, nothing out of the ordinary there. And then again, looking into the future, in May, we'll have the DBE update.
Is the work session, that is typically a full board
Yes.
meeting, correct?
Work
Okay.
session is typically a full board meeting, yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay, I don't believe we have any reason for closed session today, in which case we are adjourned. Thanks very much for being
Thank you
here.
all.
Understand that